In this video, we discuss peace negotiations, whether or not Ukraine will win the war, and we discuss the U.S. aid being sent to Ukraine.
Ну, послушайте, вот если мы под Киевом уничтожили 5 комплексов Патриот, то что нам стоит уничтожить любое здание и сооружение в центре Киева? Нет таких ограничений. Мы не делаем это по ряду соображений. Скоро Украина перестанет вообще использовать свою собственную технику. Ничего не остается. Все, на чем они воюют, и все, что используют, это все извне привносится. Ну так долго не навоюешь.
As far as whether or not we will win, this is my hope and prayer. I know it's a big challenge. It may take more than just, this summer and fall. It may extend for the next 2 or 3 years, potentially might become a situation like Israel, where Ukraine has to form a strong defense like an Iron Dome. This is what I think is most likely. Either that or Russia breaks apart from within. The other option would be a stalemate and draw new lines, but I guarantee you Ukraine is not going to settle for that at all. As far as peace negotiations, I would agree with all the Ukrainians in this video that it just doesn't make sense. They know who Putin is. They know there's no sense in negotiating until they withdraw completely from Donbas and Crimea, and I completely agree with that. As far as U.S. aid being sent to Ukraine, there's a lot of people complain about, $130+ billion. I don't disagree that America should help you with Ukraine. I disagree with in the way that they have. I think they've intentionally drugged the war out, that they have, they could have helped them win much more quickly and decisively, for one. For two, they could have a lot more transparency in how the funds are sent and how they're used, et cetera, et cetera. And three, if you look at the bills that were passed in 2022 in the United States and 2023, Congress is passing funding. And even many years prior to this, Rand Paul has pointed out just the completely ludicrous things we spend money on. Kevin Freeman has pointed out in his book, According to Plan, the ludicrous things that we spend money on. I listened to a guy who used to work for the Army or the Pentagon. He was explaining how they have these old bills that were passed decades ago, and every year the funding for these things are automatically renewed that we don't even use anymore. So you mean to tell me we're sending billions of dollars, but we can't afford an accountant? We can't afford to go through and eliminate waste? This is insane. If you can send $130 billion to a country, you can hire a couple accountants, or you can use a blockchain, make everything transparent. You have tons of options at your disposal, and you're intentionally choosing to not use any of them. Samantha Power says I don't think we could have got the funding if we didn't have this DIA app. Well, then how do we see it? How do we verify it with this DIA app? Tell us, because I don't believe you for a second. So I don't disagree that we should continue sending aid to Ukraine. I do believe, which is like 1 to 2% of the budget, why don't you cut out the real waste and spending on this CRT agendas, LGBT agendas, and whatever else nonsense you're trying to do to destroy the country from within, about the funding of these illegal immigrants coming in the hotels. So yes, there's a lot of countries we shouldn't have been in the past. Does that mean we're never supposed to go in any country ever? And then when we do, it's only for sinister reasons. So I'm for aid to Ukraine. I'm just not for this nonsense that we live in today. So there's been conflicting reports out there about number of casualties or who is winning the war, who will win the war, that there's no way Ukraine can win. Some Ukrainians say that we absolutely must and will win. In your opinion, who is winning this war and who will win this war?
So first of all, we should define what is a winning of this war from both sides. What is victory or winning of this war from Ukraine side, and what is a victory for the Russians? Putin tomorrow, he may say, "Sir, yeah, we win. It's it. We win." And propaganda will support it, and all the Russians will be happy about it. It will be end of the war with a victory. Actually, it's already was said by the famous Russian propagandist Margarita Simonyan. She's Armenian descent, but she's a Russian propagandist. She said, actually, yeah, we won. We won over Ukraine. We had a victory in 3 days. We were in Hostomel. It's a victory. Now we fought with the NATO.
That's a difficult question to answer because you have to define what winning means. For Russia, winning means accomplishing their goals. when they started this war, their goal was obviously to cause the disintegration of Ukraine, right? They were coming to attack Kiev, and we've heard from many different sources, and there's a lot of evidence to show that they expected that Ukraine would fall within 3 days because they did not expect the resistance that there was. So for Russia, winning the war means the disintegration of Ukraine within 3 days. Well, that did not happen. It didn't happen within a month, and it hasn't happened in over a year now, and it will not happen. Even if they were not planning on controlling all of Ukraine, because there have been reports that they offer the west of Ukraine, western parts of Ukraine to Poland, for Poland to annex them, and maybe Hungary to take Transcarpathia or something else. But they have not caused the disintegration of Ukraine, and they will not. So they have not accomplished their goals, which in my mind means they have not won, and they cannot win because those are their goals. Now, Putin is very good at redefining his goals and using his propaganda machine to convince people that, I really didn't want to take the whole country. We just want to take these 5 regions and so on and so on. And he will continue to do that. And I'm actually very happy that he does that, because that means that there's still a possibility for him to come out of this saving face in Russia, which would make it easier for him to put an end to the war. If he, through his propaganda, can save his face domestically, but end the war and get out of Ukraine. But no, there's no way Russia can win. Like you were saying before, Finland is now in NATO. Sweden will join NATO. Ukraine's military is just getting stronger. Russia is a pariah in the world. Russia is losing. Putin is ruining Russia. He's not just ruining Ukraine. He's ruining Russia, and he's doing it economically, militarily. He's doing it socially. He's doing it morally. He's doing it in a religious way as well. He is bringing this country to its knees, and Russia will be a mess for decades because of what he's doing. I feel really sorry for people in Russia. He is messing with people's minds. He is ruining families. He's killing fathers and brothers and husbands. I mean, it's terrible what he's doing to his own country. As far as Ukraine winning, will Ukraine be able to, return all of its territories, the legal territory of Ukraine from 1991? I certainly hope so. I think it's possible. I'm not a military analyst, so I don't know, but I know people in Ukraine have the desire and the will for it. It's possible if the United States and the EU, NATO, other countries will continue to support Ukraine. Ukrainian men are willing to keep fighting. And the Ukrainian military is willing to keep fighting. Ukrainian society, to a large extent, is willing to keep fighting, but it needs help.
It is a difficult question. In my opinion, Russia lost the war on the 24th of February 2022, no matter how the war will end. However, Russia never cared for people. If you look at the casualties of World War II on Russia's end, or Soviet Union's end, sorry, they're astonishing. The assessment is about 28 million people killed. 28 million people. And it's not all, or not necessarily, is all attributed to Germans. That's just how Soviet Union and commanders chose to lead the warfare. People's lives didn't matter. There are common stories where there was one gun for two, where there were заградотряды, which were units behind the troops, and if the troops were to retreat, they would shoot their own troops. It's a common knowledge. Lives didn't matter, and so Russia keeps fighting this war like this. They ran out of, it looks like, modern weapon that they had, and they're pulling out weapon from the late 40s, early 50s, tanks like T-54, etc. It's old stuff, 70-year-old stuff, which indicates that they're running out of ammunition. However, there are people to die in Russia, so they keep sending more and more people. The losses on Ukrainian side are classified, so we don't know how many people are being killed on Ukrainian side. And even if the ratio is 1 to 5, it's still a huge number of Ukrainians that are being killed every day. So if a large number of Ukrainians is being killed, then we can come to a point when there will be nobody to fight. Nobody left to fight, or hardly anybody left to fight. Russia will keep pumping people. Their population is at least 5 times size of Ukrainian population. So they can supply more, and that is the sad thing. West supplies weapon that is by far superior, it seems, to what Russia has. But again, you need people, and I'm just not sure. On top of that, and you would know that better than me, but there's some unhealthy social movements that are happening in Ukraine, a lot of which are disintegrating. For example, there's a big division between those who stayed in Ukraine, those who left Ukraine. there's a big division between which part of Ukraine are you from. So if you are from the war zone, maybe you're more of a Ukrainian, but some of the people, I would not say all, but there are some people in the Western Ukraine who would say, why did you come? Go back to where you came from. There's not much of a hospitality there. Not much of a help is provided. Not by all. There are a lot of people who are helping, but there are some subcurrents like that are lifting their head here or there, and that is not a good thing. The salaries, economic situation, the salaries dropped, prices grew, the amount of humanitarian aid is being limited, and so the longer it drags, the war, that is, the worse it gets for Ukraine. So I was frankly more optimistic a few months ago, but again, the things don't necessarily get better with time. So the tension is growing, the social tensions obviously on the front lines with the number of soldiers who are dying and the pressing need to replace them from Ukrainian side. And I don't know to what extent this pool of soldiers, Ukrainians, for mobilization will be available. So even though I do hope and pray that Ukraine will win and will win soon.
Hard to say who's winning right now. I think Ukraine has the military upper hand. You know, we've got the technology and a lot of support from the West and a lot of good weapons coming in. Russia has a lot of bodies, and they're just willing to sacrifice everyone that they can to have their little zombie army. And there really is, I mean, they're just the Walking Dead. It's just the numbers, just overwhelm them with numbers. And they don't care if their own soldiers are slaughtered. They just want to advance. And so it's hard to say. I don't know. I'm not a strategist, military strategist, but I think for a 3-day, what they thought was going to be a 3-day, military thing, the fact that it's gone, we're in our 13th month now. Yeah. We're being in their 13th month now, and they're losing tens of thousands of people to take a village. I wouldn't call that winning. They have the advantage of having more people. They will be able to put out a whole lot more people than Ukraine can. But what is it now? Is it like 3-to-1, 4-to-1 casualties for every one Ukrainian who's killed? There's at least 4, I think, Russians who are killed. It's just a matter of how long Putin can continue to send bodies, and how long the Russian people will allow their next generation to be slaughtered. For what,
He has no I think no sources or no power for a long-term war, because war is very it takes a lot of money, a lot of lives, a lot of sources. I don't think he would have success. At the beginning, Russia has overestimated his own possibility to gain control over Ukraine, because we are speaking about this plan Kiev to take Kiev in 3 days. Now we have more than 1 year of full-scale war. I've heard about a lot of people who were from Russia. Well, that Russia has a lot of casualties, and because of this sanctions that were posed by the US and Western countries, Russia has no possibility to strengthen its own army and to support its own economy for a long time period. Sanctions, I just compare them with medicine. You take some medicine. Some medicine are like I don't know, aspirin. It works at once, but some only in 2 or 3 days. But it works. So what we now see that Russia is trying to find weapons, shells for the artillery, other things to support their army, to find new people who are about to fight for Russia and so on. But it's very problematic. That's why I don't believe that Russia is winning after their very successful counter-operation near Kiev, in the region of Kherson and Kharkiv. And I think that due to the massive support of Western countries, US, Canada, and so on, in weaponry and Technic, Bradley, M777, Patriot, HIMARS, and so on. Ukraine accumulated a lot of war power to defeat Russia or to make a good progress in this war. So I don't think that there are evidences that Russia can win and that they will have strategic success in Ukraine. Tactically, yes, we can see it in the region of Bakhmut that there are some small successes maybe, but if we compare the time, this success is nothing.
First of all, I don't think that if money will help to save people, we need to, like, I mean, the Putin is completely right now it's evil and he is doing evil, and I think the Christian position should be to stop evil all the time. We can say, okay, Satan is stronger than we, let's just give up to fight with him. I don't see that Bible says fight with evil when you only think that you're enough to to stop it. Okay, this is different. This is not completely the same. The second thing, more practical, I really believe that our success, I don't want in this moment, because this interview made for American, especially conservatives, but I definitely think that the brave of people, and by the way, to the topic about the Crimea 2014, I don't think that Ukrainians were so weak in 2014. We just didn't have a good generals, a good decisions. I think we could do more than we did, not only because of the level, definitely it's grow, as you said, but now it just all together, example of the president who didn't run away, good generals, a brave spirit, definitely. But I think the moment where we are and all wins that we get and we will get in the future are only because America and other countries definitely, but especially America is sending money, equipment, tanks, and I hope we'll send more and we'll have to help to stop it as soon as possible.
That Russia lose all this very important strategically part for them as Kyiv region, Chernihiv region, Sumy region, and even Kharkiv region. So you could see this Kharkiv operation, the liberation of many villages and the biggest part of Kharkiv region now. So from my point of view, soon in several months, weeks, we will see some surprise from Ukrainian military forces, and people say that because they do not see any changes in front line, people tired maybe from this war. But of course, from my point of view and point of view of many Ukrainians, all Ukrainians, Ukraine will win this war, and Ukraine is winning this war, and on strategic level, first of all, and even on tactical. So how we could say that Russia is winning the war if they're preparing for, preparing in Zaporizhia region, in Crimea, they dig in this trancheas, something like that.
So the first objective to take Kyiv in 3 days and install a government to create an actual coup failed. Then they switched to going back for the SPCR, the southern eastern territory, to go all the way to Transnistria. That's why they were bombing. They were attacking Mykolaiv and Kherson on the way to Odessa. That didn't work. Then he put the assignment to get the control over full Luhansk and Donetsk area. That didn't happen. Then they decided they need Bakhmut for whatever reason. I don't know why they're still there and putting thousands and thousands to death. They were trying to get Bakhmut, I think, since summer, maybe September, and it's the end of March. So I don't know. I don't know what winning the war is for Russia, because I know what is winning the war is for us, but I don't know what is winning the war is for Russia. It already lost.
Well, I do believe that Ukraine is winning and Ukraine will win this war completely. I don't know on what price in the end. I know this price is very high and being paid every day. But why I think that Ukraine is winning, not only because I'm Ukrainian, I truly believe that Ukraine is protecting the land and the people. So Ukraine didn't actually start all this. But why I think that it's winning, just because Russia didn't achieve anything during this 1 year, 2 months. I mean, the territories which Russia occupied cannot be named Russian territories, because unless Crimea, and I unfortunately must say that I think a lot of people in Crimea actually would like to stay on Russian side, but they didn't occupy Crimea with their war or with their battle, but they did occupy these territories which are nowadays being occupied in Ukraine by battle, by humiliation, by repressions, and so on, by actual killing. And no one loves the killer. So that's why I don't think they're winning, because they have less and less support, even from those who in the beginning were in the middle or were even supporting them. I'm talking about Hungary. And today, for example, Zelensky had a call with Chinese president. I don't know if it's if it will be leading to something, but it's definitely not a bad thing, because all this time, Chinese leader wasn't talking to Zelensky. Today they spoke. So probably it's at least something. I'm not sure. I'm kind of sure that Kremlin will be very disappointed with the fact of this. So I don't see how they can win, because for this really long period for 21st century, they didn't achieve anything but blood and tears, nothing else.
I don't believe in people winning wars. Whenever you have a war, everybody loses. One side loses more and eventually loses his objectives. Another side might achieve his objectives. But Russia is absolutely getting their butts kicked in all of this. The loss of life that they're suffering, the devastation to their own economy, the fact that they're not able to hold any land. You can look at the deepstate.ua maps. They're not winning, right? This idea of Russia trying to secure Ukraine and bring it under Russian control into the Russian Federation, that's the goal, and it's not working out for them. Even if they would have been able to militarily occupy Kiev, which is outrageous because the Russian military is an absolute dumpster fire, then how on earth would they maintain it and control it, right? Not going to happen. We had the National Guard troops very regularly on rotation in Western Ukraine to train the Ukrainian soldiers. So that was a big help. I think American soldiers are the best asset that America can provide Ukraine. But then it wasn't until 2022 that America pulled back. The Ukrainian military was stronger at this point, but Russia amassed on the borders and then escalated and did a charge on the north as well as the south. When you pull out all the troops and you say, if Russia attacks Ukraine, we will not fight back. But don't you dare do it, Russia. That will increase suffering. That's not very convincing that you are trying to stop the war, right?
Right.
So this second wave in 2022 caught Ukraine not by surprise in the sense of, oh wow, we didn't see that coming because they were massing the troops up, but it caught Ukraine in a state of unpreparedness. And the past year has been characterized of Ukraine fighting back and being more organized. So the only time that Russia is able to, get back to the original point, the only times that Russia is able to really carry out strong offensives is whenever Ukraine is not prepared. And so Ukraine is at a heightened state of preparedness right now. So Russia is only going to get pushed further and further and further back at great cost. The only hope that Russia has is if they can get a West that will stop promoting Ukraine, that will stop helping Ukraine. That would be one thing that Russia would need. And then they would have to come into Ukraine and somehow subdue an entire nation of people that they have been oppressing now for centuries. Russia is not going to be able to take over Ukraine. It would, no, not in this generation.
And if we would look on the map of the military action, we would see that starting from the idea to capture Kiev in 3 days, they end up being basically on the same positions in Donbas, and like they capture some of our territory on the south. The important thing to understand, they wouldn't stop on Ukraine. If they would be successful back then, if they would succeed in capturing Ukraine, they wouldn't stop there. They didn't stop in Chechnya, they didn't stop in Georgia, they didn't stop after Moldova, neither they would stop in Ukraine. And if they were successful back then, now we would be talking about the war is somewhere else in Europe.
In this particular case, I don't think any side is winning because Ukraine wants to drive Russians out of Ukraine completely, which is not the case as we can see now, and Russia wants to capture, demilitarize, denazify, be something, and completely make Ukraine its vassal. But again, it doesn't. The goal is not complete, right? And of course we. Why I'm saying we're not neither side is winning, because our economy is in pretty bad shape, to be honest. We have mass mobilization. I do understand it, but we still have our independence, and it costs much more than this. Russia is waging unnecessary war. While if Russia loses, it loses only what, equipment and men, and maybe reputation in the world, which is already lost. While if Ukraine loses, we lose our independence. And I heard the claim that it's Russia is fighting for their existence. It's an existence issue. No, it's Ukraine's existence issue. Right? If we lose this war, there will be no Ukraine anymore, and the buildings, factories, and other things can be rebuilt. It's the matter of our independence that we fight for, because being under Russian control for that many years was atrocious. To my mind, neither side is winning, but good thing for Ukraine that we still have our independence and our armed forces, contain Russians and don't allow them to capture any more land. And if Russia captures anything, I'm pretty sure with the help of the European Union, the USA, if it's still going to be, if there's still going to be a flow of armaments and help, we will do better. I mean, at least drive Russians from to the lines that were like before the war, to that before 24th of February.
It's really tough and dramatic question for me, because I know that Ukrainians now have a shortage of weapons and men, and I think this is also the Putin strategy, that they have more men to fight. So I'm just praying that God will provide his deliverance for us, because without him, it won't be possible. We are a small country and we do not have that much resources. So I see it from this point of view.
So, like I said, Russia has more resources, at least if we're talking about people. And I think they also have, it's obvious that they have more resources if we're talking about vehicles, guns, rocket shooters, tanks, and everything, planes. Of course, NATO is helping us, but this help is not enough to free our lands today. But everyone is talking about Ukrainian counterattack that is going to happen soon. Russia has captured a lot of territories when they started, and Ukraine freed like 1/3 or even more of these territories. I'm talking about the territories that were captured after 2022. And right now, after our counterattack, we pushed them away, and now they are trying to push us back. So now their counterattack is happening. And as far as we can see, they are moving and they are pushing us back, but very slowly. It's like could be a couple of 100 meters a day, could be a couple of kilometers a day. But Ukraine is a pretty big country, so it's going on slowly. So it's all about how many weapons and vehicles and planes and artillery we will get from the West, and how many people in Russia are ready to die for Putin's life. I really hope and pray that we would be given enough support, military support, that we can push the Russians back.
But of course, I realize that a lot of people will die when that will be happening. Right now, more Russians are dying because they are attacking, and we stop them. Always, it's always when you defend, you lose 2 or 3 times less people when you are attacking. But there will come a time when we will be attacked, and we will be losing a bunch of people, and we don't have as many resources as Russians. So it's all about timing. Of we cannot afford this war to be happening for as much time as Russia does. So it's all about when we will be given military support and how much.
I think for sure that Russia will never win the war because we have nowhere to retreat, and many countries know that the truth behind us, and that's why they provide the good weapons. So I hope with God, with our military, with all those weapons, we will win for sure in not long time.
God was using the key power of Putin in order to destroy or to begin to destroy his power.
Several Americans have suggested that we must have peace talks, that we must have peace negotiations with Putin. Like Elon Musk and others have said that we must give up some land if necessary. What are your thoughts about this? Will negotiating with Putin, is that even viable? Will it even help if Ukraine was willing to give up some land for the sake of peace?
I'm not convinced of that, of the viability of that, because Ukraine cannot give up land for peace. By that I mean, if Ukraine does give up land, that will not guarantee peace. The best that will do is put an end to gunfire for a couple of years until Russia does another blitzkrieg. It will not end the Russian ideological war against Ukraine. It will not end the Russian ideological war against the West. There will be no peace with Russia. So we can't pretend like giving up land is going to somehow usher in peace. The best you can say is that giving up land might, or any other action, might decrease the violence from Russia, but there will not be peace with Russia, not on this side of eschatology, right?
We should have learned from the history. I mean, we're repeating the same lesson again and again and again. This is not how we how people sane people are to deal with aggressors. I mean, First World War, same thing. Serbia, Bosnia, war there. The Austro-Hungarian Empire tried to capture that. Russia mobilized, started the war and stuff. Second World War, giving piece by piece, giving land to Hitler and Stalin. You know, a split of Poland and Baltic countries and war in Finland. And 2008 in Georgia. You know, that just for the sake of peace, that Putin has it would trade again. And 2014, Crimea and Donbas, and now 2022. It just boggles my mind why people don't see it's quite obvious. Don't feed the monster, because he will only develop the thirst and hunger for more and more things. Money is one issue, but I think America has a large stockpile of weapons that instead of can be used instead of sending money and stuff. And in anyways, whatever they send, we're grateful and appreciate. I mean, tons of humanitarian aid, tons of arms coming from the US. It's just amazing. I think that might save the day.
No, I think the only one land which we probably could give up, and of course I'm not even close to those who are making such decisions and who are discussing such decisions. I don't see the whole battle picture, but I think the only one territory which we could give up is Crimea. But giving to Russia Donetsk and Lugansk region, even knowing how absolutely heartbreaking it looks now, and how many people there are probably don't know where they are, and yeah, in which country they want to live. But giving it all to Russia would mean that in few more years, maybe 2, maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 12, Russia would come for other territories. So I'm sure, but that's why I also think that the ideal picture would also be bring Crimea back. But I just don't know. I mean, if it would be through, and it can be probably only through the military way, I don't know if this is a good reason, because many people will die there for sure, both sides. But that side, I'm not really much caring, although I know it's not really good to say such thing. But a lot of civilians would die who live now in Crimea, just because this is the way it goes, and a lot of Ukrainian fighters would die, and we already unfortunately have a lot of people dead.
In a way, Ukraine already gave up some lands after 2014, right? Russians just captured those lands, and there was not an active phase in the war. Like, Ukrainians did not actively try to capture those lands back. They were mostly trying to control the front line. Russians didn't stop after having captured those lands. And look at their propaganda today. They're talking about all Ukraine captured. They're talking about Odessa capture, which is far away from the front line. They're talking about other European countries captured too, Poland.
Russia has one of the largest territories in the world. More than 60% of this territories, their people in their villages live without gas, toilets in their houses, and drinking water. And they spend millions of dollars on bombs to destroy our cities. In fact, they specifically hit civilian houses and shopping malls. Please take your territory and do whatever you want there. Don't come to our house. That's my decision. Today we will give Crimea, tomorrow we will give Kharkiv, next day Sumy, what else they want. From their plans, and as I heard, they want half of the Ukraine now. And tomorrow they will want another half. If you watch on the map, is the Dnieper River goes right in the middle. So they want all this in the middle. Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Sumy is huge territory. It's huge. Please take your territory, do whatever you want. Take care of your own people. That's what I think. In Kharkiv region, they seized a farm and killed 200 cows with guns. Why? Why you come to the farm? Why you want to kill a cow? It's crazy. For me, it's crazy. And also, when they captured the villages, they tortured and raped small children. How can we give any piece of territory to people with head problems? And only in eastern part of Ukraine, we found trenches of tortured and buried people after Russian retreat. Between 3,000 to 5,000 depends on the village. So they come to the village, they kill everybody there, and after they made this tranches in a forest, and they just bury everyone there. So these people are crazy. They need to be how do you call when the people in jail? They need to be in jail. They not need to be in our territory.
Yeah, so imagine China invading the United States and the United States agreeing to give up, say, Alaska or Washington State, Oregon, and California, because there are Chinese soldiers there. And if you would just sign a peace agreement, then they would stop fighting. And it's basically peace at the cost of losing, in Ukraine's case now, I think it's about 20% of the country's territory. First of all, that is a huge loss. The United States would never do anything like that. But people in the United States think that for some reason Ukraine could or should do that. And it goes back to an earlier point of people not respecting Ukraine and seeing Ukraine just as a bargaining chip and not an important country in Europe, just not respecting Ukraine and Ukrainians. Along with that, I do think it would be the opposite of the message we want to send to Putin and to the world, including to China. In other words, yes, you may invade, you can do whatever you want, and then we will try to appease you and stop you, and then you can keep the territory that you took from a peaceful sovereign state. That's not that's not the precedent you want to set in the world. That's not how we want things to be run, especially when we think of China and Taiwan. Also, Putin feeds on weakness. He respects strength. So if you give in and you let him take the territory, then you have not stopped him. What you've done is you've shown weakness, and he will come back. History has clearly proven that. He took part of the Donbas in 2014. He took Crimea. Come 2022, he's back. We do this in 2023, appease him again. Well, 8 years later, he or somebody else from Russia will be back. And also, you cannot trust him. He might sign a peace agreement, but that paper is not worth anything. So that's not the way you work with a thug, which is what he is.
No, I disagree. At one time, I might have agreed with that, but no, I don't think he'll ever stop. I don't think he's ever going to be content until he just takes more and more. I think you have, when you're dealing with a bully like that, you just got to punch him in the face and send him back. You got to draw the line and say, no, this is our territory. This is our sovereign land. We're not going to go negotiate with a terrorist.
Negotiate about what? Again, let's say, I will say this. First of all, we need to understand that Ukraine was always ready to negotiate. They wasn't ready to negotiate on the Putin's rules, which mean basically to just give them everything they took. And we don't know the future, none of us except God, but one of the improvements about the other theory that much more likely than the theory of Elon Musk, that if we will negotiate, we will save at least what we have, that in 2014, we kind of negotiated, we kind of agreed to lose, maybe not officially, some regions to save others. And what's happened? The war. In Georgia, they gave one region in 90s, Russia took another one in 20s. So it's basically doesn't stop. I don't want to listen to people who live in penthouse in California or somewhere about the negotiation. If they will come and live here and realize what is a freedom, I believe they realize because they live in states, a country of freedom. And I want to see if they're, I don't know, like somebody like, okay, let's say president of China will take the half of California, and Ukraine will say to other celebrities who stayed in that part of California that didn't take in, don't fight, leave it alone. You can save lives. Or people who was fighting for your freedom a few hundred years ago with Queen, or not Queen, with the British Empire for freedom. Fighting for freedom is always like, I don't want my kids will live in the country in a fear that somebody always can destroy you. I want people will live in, my future generation will live in country where they don't afraid, and evil should be punished, not negotiated.
It's kind of easy to say when it's not your land. So I don't believe it is possible to appease Russia. I think that giving up some land and having peace talks, it would benefit Russia and hurt Ukraine. I don't think that Russia would give up on its plans to recapture Ukraine. It will just regroup, get more weapon, and relaunch the assault. So will the world benefit from that? I also don't think so, because the world has invested into Ukraine significantly. And in terms of humanitarian aid, military aid, there was a lot of money spent. And then to lose the territory, it will make no sense. For Russia to gain this territory will also make no sense, because it will be destroyed territory that would need significant influx of funds in order to rebuild. I don't think Russia would do that. And their plan was not to rebuild Ukraine, not to change Ukraine, Ukraine's economy, etc. Russia's plan was to control Ukraine. So to gain control for Russia over those small destroyed territories would be a fail in a sense. Obviously, they will present it as a political victory, but in the mind of those who initiated the war, it would be a failure because they still do not control Ukraine. So I don't think it will. I don't think any peace negotiations will deliver desirable results for any of the parties. It will just be buying some time, and that is in the best interest of Russia, as things stand, at least from what I know from the open sources.
The words of Labour mayor, she was a prime minister of Israel, and she said once, there is there is no way to negotiate with people who came to kill you, and I think it could be applied to Ukraine, because if we saw how we saw it in 2014 with Crimea and Donbas and Lugansk, it was only the beginning. And after the full-scale war began, there were maybe 2 or 3 attempts to make negotiations with Russia, and I just followed it and saw that the normal negotiation is win-win situation. So you can win something and I can win something. But in this case, it was like that. Russian says, okay, we could negotiate, but we have our topics, and we want you to say yes to our topics. What we want to do. It's the Russian interpretation of negotiations. They have some points. Please say yes to them, and then it's everything okay. In other words, they want us to surrender. They want us to say, okay, region Kherson, region Donetsk and Lugansk are under Russian control. Maybe region of Zaporizhia is also. They want to mark them as Russian territories. They want to get time to prepare their own army and then to move to other regions of Ukraine. I think they would say, okay, maybe Western Ukraine can be under Poland because it was many years ago Polish territory, but we should gain our territories that were in as part of Soviet Union, Kiev, Odessa, Dnipropetrovsk, and so on. So there is we cannot afford ourselves to negotiate with Russia because they want to mark these occupied territories, gain time to prepare for other war, and then to move. So I think people who are I've heard such thoughts that you have mentioned from my friends in Germany, who told me I think that Ukraine will negotiate with Russia and they will come to peace, but they can't understand the true motivation of Putin. They still think that it was a kind of misunderstanding, it was a conflict, and so on. So why should you fight and kill people in Russia and they kill your people? You just sit down, negotiate, and it will be peace. But it's not, because they don't see the facts and they don't see the Putin's real aim. And I think that he tried and earlier, and he does it now. His massive propaganda in Western countries, like this television or Russia Today. There is in every country, in Germany, in Spain, and so on, this TV channels where he brought his Russian propaganda, and people believe it. That's the problem. They tell people in Western countries, see, Ukraine does such and such things, and what we want just peace. But it's not true, because at the same time, when you're sitting here in Ukraine, you hear the bombings, you've heard about massacre in Bucha, in Irpin, how you should think that those people want to bring peace and to negotiate with you.
I think they don't really understand what's going on. It's not about a small piece of land. They already had one in Donbas. And this is not about a piece of land. This is about erasing Ukraine from being, unless it is completely under Russian influence and it's back in, let's say, new Soviet Union. If Ukraine falls, I think there will be even more war in the world, because it will show the flags to other nations like Iran, like China, like many others, that you can do something. You can invade a country because you are powerful, because you have tanks and planes, and you can do whatever you like to the people, commit war crimes, and you will do okay. You will get some territories, maybe not as much as you intended, but some, and you can then wait for 2 or 3 years, collect even more manpower and war techniques, and get a next round. I think it will not end. This is it should be stopped because this is not like a war for some resource or a piece of territory. It's a different kind of war. So unless we want more wars in the world, Ukraine should stand, and Russians should get out of the country.
You even talk about, a peace agreement. If someone's breaking into your house and they're raping your wife and they're destroying your house and they're stealing everything, you don't come to a peace agreement. You start shooting, you get them out, and you don't develop an agreement to have them live in your garage. And so I think Putin fears or respects power. And if you start negotiating with him saying, okay, well, you can have this and you can have this, he's like, okay, yeah, sure, that'll be great. And he'll wait a few years and then he'll encroach some more and he'll keep doing it. You just got to push him back and say, no, this is where it stops. This is wrong. You're going back to the hole you're in. So I think who knows, depending on the state of the war and the militaries, maybe they will negotiate at some point, but up to now, Zelensky has said this war will be over when Russia is out of the Donbas, when they're out of Crimea, when they're out of Ukraine completely. And I respect that. I think that needs to be done. Just keep building up the military and building up in Ukraine and building it up until Russia would just have to be, foolish to try anything ever again. I think that there needs to be a sound defeat of Russia. I mean, and I hate that because I know a lot of the men who are serving were forced to serve. They went and they got all the ethnic minorities. They went and got, to the villages. They didn't go to Moscow to get the soldiers. They got all the undesirables and they're pushing them on the front line to be killed. So my heart goes out to them. Those are men that are created in God's image. And I know there's some bad men there and there's some evil men. They've emptied out all the prisons and they've sent all the prisoners to the front line to fight and told them you're free to kill and steal and destroy. And so I know they're bad people, but there are some people that were forced into that situation too. I don't want it to continue, but I think that's the only way this is going to end is if they are just soundly defeated and pushed down.
Yes, well, that's already happened in 2014, and that happened in Georgia, where I am right now. In 1991 and 1992, they occupied Abkhazia and Lower Abkhazia. I don't remember the name. Then in 2008, they came back and occupied Southern Ossetia. And Georgia is not that big. If they come next time, we know what's going to happen. So the same thing with Ukraine. Well, the West and international law, which I think is dead and has been dead for a while, did not do anything when Crimea was taken. And first he was lying that it was Samooborona, self, whatever, Crimean self, whatever, from the Nazi or whoever they were protecting themselves from. Then he said that this Samooborona had Russian forces from Sevastopol supporting them, and then he specifically said in his interview that it was Russian army. So the dude showed up with the confession, but the West international law didn't do anything. So he started a war on Donbas, and after the war on Donetsk and Luhansk. Then after that, 8 years, we have a full-scale invasion. So and now we have people from that areas being mobilized to fight with their former, fellow countrymen. So it's pretty safe to assume if he's alive, and even if he's not alive, like somebody else will do the same. Because in 2008, actually, Medvedev was president when they attacked Georgia. He wasn't president. So even if he's not alive, this is going to continue until forever. And then after Ukraine, it will be Baltics and Poland and whoever they can get. It's obvious. Moldova, where you are right now?
No, we already had negotiation with Russia, Minsk negotiation and so on. We already had frozen conflict, and for us, it's not good at all. So we, as Ukrainians, we are against frozen conflict and all negotiation with Russia and with President Putin until their troops will leave Ukraine territory. So for sure, we already have paid really high price, and we will not have peace if we will stop right now, because of course Russia might be weak right now, and for them it would be good chance to become stronger enough to try again, as we see in Chechnya, in Ichkeria. So as we first war and second war, it was the same. So for us is the chance to get all our territories get back, and all Ukrainian territories should be like Ukraine should be unite and independent. And this pause and this all negotiation it's good for Russia, but not for Ukraine. So I'm afraid that people do not understand situation and context in Ukraine, that if we will start negotiation right now, it will lead to much more bigger war, and even in Europe. So people think that we will feed Ukraine for Russia and they will stop. No, they will not stop. That's why our best friends as Poland, as Baltic countries, they understand it. They understand it. That's why they support as much as they can, because they understand if Russia will win and will get Ukraine, they will be the next one. Next one will be Poland and Baltic countries. And then, so people just, who is asking, people just need to read and to learn some history lessons, because it was the same with Hitler. If we don't want to have Third World War, we have to stop Russia here in Ukraine.
Back in, was it 98, Budapest Memorandum, when they said,
Right.
United Kingdom, America, and Russia all said to Ukraine, you get rid of all your nuclear weapons and we will protect you if anyone invades you. Well, Russia invades. And that was under Clinton. We made a commitment to Ukraine that we would protect them. And it is right that we are there. I mean, it's smart for us to be there for the future, but we told them, we made them get rid of their weapons, their nuclear weapons. And so it is right that we are there. We should be a country that honors our promises.
Unfortunately, Ukraine was promised that her borders, its borders would be never disrupted, but it happened. So maybe it would sound a bit, I don't know how to say, arrogant, but I think in some point, civilized countries like USA and European Union, they own something to Ukraine, because either way, Ukraine wouldn't give up the nuclear weapon. And I'm sure if Ukraine had a nuclear weapon, Russia would never do what it did, starting from Crimea.
The uniqueness of each nation is being brought to worship God when the kingdom arrives in its fullness. And if you read Genesis, nations are created before Babel. So nations are God's idea. And I think it's important that well, certainly every nation has its sin and its corruption, and those things need to be purged and cleansed. But the national identity is something that is important, that survives into the coming age. And so we need to be supporting, we need to be opposing cultural genocide.
As far as what is coming into Ukraine right now, money, military aid, and corruption is concerned, yes, Ukraine has a problem with corruption. Its problem is not nearly as big as Russia's problem, as far as I know. And the longer and the more it associates with Russia, the worse that problem gets. The more it associates with the EU and with the West, the better that problem gets. Not because the EU and the United States do not have a problem with corruption, but the problem there is much smaller because there's a much better system of checks and balances. And I think we have the remnants, thankfully, of Christian values still operating in those countries as well, even though those countries are moving away from Christianity. So Ukraine is not a perfect country, but right now the focus of the whole world is on Ukraine. And Ukraine does not want any of the weapons or money to end up in the wrong hands. Some of that will happen to some extent, but there has not been any evidence that I know of any weapons not going where they should, or money coming from the US not going where it should. Like I said, I'm expecting some of that to go to the wrong places because there's, over time, it's very hard to control all that, but large scale corruption, as far as that help's concerned, it's not at all in Ukraine's interest for that money and that aid to go not where it should. First of all, because it doesn't help Ukraine defeat Russia, and second of all, because the West will stop helping Ukraine if it becomes clear that the aid is not going where it should.
It wouldn't be a great surprise for me if I get to know that some help, some money was used for other purposes. It's just only because Ukraine has a high level of corruption still. Even after the war began, there are still people who just earn a lot of money on these transactions. Some people demand money from the volunteers who bring help from abroad, both generators, power generators, or some other things. I've heard about it because some were founded by the police of Ukraine. For me, it's not a surprise that not every help 100% goes to the people.
Well, I would like to add something about corruption. Well, first of all, yeah, sure, our government is a corrupted government. That's for sure. I agree completely because I'm Christian and I cannot lie. But I would like to talk about tendency. So if you look at the world rating of corruption, you will see the tendency is for Ukraine to become less and less corrupted. I made this investigation when I was writing my master thesis for Campen Theological University about God's covenantal view of justice, not social justice, what we're talking right now in nowadays. Yeah, that's completely different story. That's why I wrote that master's research. So we could see a tendency to become less corrupt. And also, this is great that Alexander pointed to this thing, that our nation, in spite of our problems with corruption, were ready to move toward European Union, where we could implement laws and mechanisms in order to become even less corrupted. Yeah, so we will move into that direction, in spite of problems with our authorities and so on. Yeah, because we could see that during all of these years since 1991, we could see how our society is growing. Yeah, growing as citizens, as conscious citizens who value Constitution and who would love to fight for their rights and to build, if that's possible, some institutions that could control our government, that could control somehow governmental organizations and so on. So, but I could tell you for sure, Russian Federation system, Putin system, is deeply rooted in system of corruption. Yeah, and of course, our representatives of government, some of them were under this, were part of this system, and Ukraine was like in this cycle of this corruption, manipulation, and power. So our movement toward European Union, yeah, it was part of that tendency to turn these ties as far as this is possible. By the way, what is funny with Russian corruption, that Putin was building his power on corruption, but at the same time, we see that this corruption greatly lessened power of his army because of corruption. So this is a really good example how it could embody itself in practical issues like army.
Yeah, another dimension of this that probably needs to be mentioned is that by various international measures, the Ukrainian government is, well, frankly, rather corrupt. And that is another element of the rhetoric that says, why are we supporting this corrupt government? Why don't we just, let them fight it out and do their own thing, and we shouldn't be supporting this, and so on. And my answer is, yeah, you know what? The government is corrupt, for that matter, so is ours, but I'm not going to get into that. But I am really not concerned about the Ukrainian government. I'm concerned about the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people don't want the Russians there for a lot of good reasons historically. They don't want to be under Russia.
Yeah.
And I would rather support them. I would rather support the idea of an independent Ukraine, a Ukraine that can keep its own language, its own culture, its own history, its own traditions, than see them go under Moscow yet again. I mean, Ukraine is almost as bad as Poland when it comes to being dominated by foreign powers in their history. And the Ukrainian people deserve their own nation. And when they don't want to be under Russia, they shouldn't have to become a vassal state with, in all likelihood, their culture and everything else being obliterated. That just is unjust and frankly unscriptural. What most people seem to forget, at least over here, is that when Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, Putin and the United States both signed treaties saying that they would honor and protect Ukraine's integrity, its borders, and things like that. As soon as Putin moved into Crimea, he violated a written treaty functionally, demonstrating that his signature on a piece of paper isn't worth the ink it took to put it there.
Yeah, and Great Britain was there also, and this Budapest Memorandum, 1994. And so when one of one who signed this paper annex Crimea, and the two other who signed this paper, they just do nothing.
Yeah, and we're living with the consequences now. I think that you have to keep in mind that the Soviet Union fell apart only about 30 years ago. And it takes time. I mean, you had a system that was inherently corrupt for its entire history. It takes time to outgrow that. It takes time to build the institutions and the culture to create good governance. You just can't legislate it into law with the stroke of a pen.
Yeah, I have no doubt that a good chunk of the money is going to the right place, that it's getting weapons, it's getting, paying for whatever, but there's definitely corruption that's still in Ukraine, definitely corruption in Washington. And when you're talking about, that much money, again, it'd be incredibly naive to think that people aren't mishandling it in some way and putting it into their own pockets and moving it around for their own gain. So yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate because you want to tell people, no, all that money's going to the front line. You were saving the nation, these people. But the reality is that there is corruption. There is a lot of it that's going into pockets.
We came out of Egypt 30 years ago. So we need 10 years more in order to wander in the desert, in order to enter land of promise. So that Israel came out of Egypt, but Egypt was in their head, in their heart. So that's why they had to come through this painful process. Yeah, painful process of how do you say this? To get rid from that Egypt. Yeah, sure.
I don't think Ukrainian people, those who have such power, would hide how this money are spent, because we also, regular people and many of us do not want to tolerate corruption. So when we see that corruption is happening, or some humanitarian aid is being sold on markets or whatever, we are also making the huge outbreaks in news about it and trying to influence this situation. So we actually, I can say about myself, but I think it's about any Ukrainian. We're actually grateful about any cent which is coming for Ukraine, whether it is weapons or some humanitarian help. So if it can be somehow arranged by the USA and Ukraine governments of showing to US people how this money are being spent, I would be personally really happy.
Without it, Ukraine also, I think, couldn't stand. It could stand, but we couldn't win without it. And we have a hope to win together with the support of the Western world. It's never happened before. And yeah, I think that's a very good sign. And that's a very good sign of that Ukraine is also a part of Western world. And first of all, because of the shared values. First of all, the values of freedom, free choice of individual, and opposing tyranny. I think people across so-called West all share these values. Yeah, and it's great to have their support, and that they continue to support Ukraine despite that the war goes on, and it could be tiring. And they also suffer from consequences, like in Europe there were some problems with energy and stuff like that, but they continue to support, and the support on the increases. So that's great that we're not alone in this fight.
It's a tough one. On one hand, I can understand the question that would be raised in their mind, that we got other things to do, and war is an expensive endeavor. So why are we investing into this war? I can understand. Can I justify? I don't think so. I think personally that it is in the world's best interest to help Ukraine to fight off Russia, because if not, then why would Russia stop? And the question is not only about Russia, but about, or for a typical dictator, Putin-like dictator, the precedent is created. You need to use brutal force, move in, and you'll get what you want. I don't think anybody wants to live in a world like that. You ask whether the people of the US like it or not, it has, since the World War II, pretty much a role of the world's policeman. And that's the role that and the function that they have to fulfill. if they won't fulfill this function, the world will change dramatically, I think, and I don't think it will necessarily be in the interest of the United States. I think the United States will get hurt a lot, if not the most, if they were to quit this role. If US was to abandon the place or the post of the world policeman, somebody else will take it. And most probably it will be China, as things are. And would they want that? Would they want China to be the world's policeman, dictate the rules and maintain order? I don't think so. I think that will hurt even the US. So I do understand people's concerns. I do understand their maybe the lack of desire to support warfare by sending weapon and money. But I think the alternative is worse.
You got a nation like Russia that will continue to push it. They will continue to, they'll move into Poland or Estonia or Latvia, Lithuania or Finland. I mean, those countries know it. They're the ones that are pushing the hardest for supporting Ukraine because they know that they're going to be on the line next. And when they get involved, and that's NATO, then it's going to be American, sons and daughters on the line. So we can send some money now, or you can send your son later. It's our choice. It was a corrupt nation before, and it didn't, just disappear. No, the corruption didn't just disappear with the war. Of course, there's still some bad apples in there, but I've seen a lot of good people rise up and do the right things. When we were trying to get people out of those areas near Nikolaev and Kherson in the beginning part of the war, more often, far more often than not, people were using their cars, their vans to go into dangerous areas and get them out, and they would not accept money. I would force at least gas money on them. People that normally would just be living for themselves. These guys were like, no, we got to do what's right. We got to help each other out. And so you're going to have, like in any nation, you're going to have people that are trying to make money off of it. Hey, we have corporations doing that right now. But it's just, we live in a sinful, fallen world, Doesn't mean you don't fight for what's right. You don't stand up to help the oppressed. I'm not for a blank check, just sitting and saying, here's $70 billion, do what you want. I think there needs to be some pretty tight controls, and for people to be able to say definitively, we sent money, it went here and here and here. This is what it was used for. It's not going into people's pockets. If you want to have a good trail, send Bitcoin and let them be able to track it. There are ways that can be done that they can track and know exactly how the money is being spent. But right now, I feel like it's loose, and I feel like we're not protecting our own borders in America. So I just think this. I think this administration is doing the right thing by supporting Ukraine, but the way they're doing it is sloppy, I think. Not that I know all the ins and outs of how they're doing it, but it appears to me that it's sloppy. I think they're neglecting the homeland. I think they're neglecting America, the border, southern border. I think they are enacting policies that are harmful to Americans. I don't like what this, I don't know. I don't like what's happening right now in America. But I think that just stopping supporting Ukraine, the support of Ukraine would be a mistake, because like I said, it serves our best interest to do it, and it's something that we committed to doing. So if you have a problem, I guess go back and get Clinton. He's the one that made the promise. But yeah, it could be done better. And that's our fault. That's not Zelensky's fault. That's not Ukraine's fault. It's the Democratic Party and whoever's are Republicans or whoever's that's enabling for the money to go out. There needs to be some accountability and be able to show people, this is how much we're doing. This is how it's being spent. This is why we're doing it. A little bit better communication would be nice. But I think it's important. You don't just stop. It's a bad look for us to negate on a promise that we made, and it's going to hurt us in the long run. Like I said, I think we'll be sending our kids over there to fight if we stop now. And it's not ultimate problem of politicians. It's not the problem of Ukraine. It's Russia's problem. It's their fault. The blame is wholly upon them. We need to do things better. But if you're going to get mad at somebody, the same Republicans that are mad about these things are praising Putin. That doesn't make any sense to me.
During the Soviet time, how much money was spent to counterbalance Soviet Union and his power? So now it's just golden opportunity. You spend much less money. Actually, it's less than 1% of American budget for all this money which poured in Ukraine, mostly the weapon, to deter Russians. And keep in mind, if American will fail to support Ukraine with the weapon and with the money and with the food and whatever, so China will be inspired to annex Taiwan.
Hmm.
So one thing. Second, if Russians will occupy Ukraine, then they will attack for sure one of the country of NATO, and then American soldiers will die. Not just it will be money; it will be then Americans who will send their children to fight Putin.
Yeah, I do understand. One thing to understand for me, as that I understand as Ukrainian, no one owes us a thing. No one owes us a thing. It's just your goodwill that we hope for, you know, and your sanity that you will actually understand it. You can't feed that monster anymore. That this is the last, probably one of the last lines of defense. Because you know I do understand this is like American tax money going to the war, but I see it as just your goodwill. If you stop, I won't blame anyone. I guess I will join forces, join armed forces, and do the front lines, defend my land with whatever I have, with AK-47, whatever. But I do understand the concern, because I know about issues in the States about rising wokeism, about leftists and fascination with communism. From the war in Ukraine becomes, you know, your 10th, 12th, 20th priority. But look at this. Look at the issue from Ukrainian perspective. If one bully beats his you know, groupmate or classmate or whoever or neighbor, I mean, this is I think it's a good thing to stand behind that, the one who's beaten, and stand against the bully together. I mean, what do you lose apart from money? In any case, we as Christians have to not to multiply the money, but to convert it into something more valuable. Right? And I think this is a good opportunity, not just with humanitarian aid, but help us to defend our land. This is a good opportunity to stand against the bully.
We would have been captured, I think, without Western support. We need money. We need money for economy, because the economy is not working well. Many people stopped having their business, and they are not paying taxes because so many, like what, 5 million of Ukrainians, or how many millions left? At least 5. It's more than that, and they don't have people who want their goods, or they need something that these businesses will provide. Yeah, we definitely need money, and they use this for military support, because we also need to buy it. We don't produce like anything. We need to pay money to people in the army. People, even if the person does not want to go to the army, for example, is too scared to join it because he wants to leave. People go there because they need to support their families. For example, if you have 3 kids, you don't have to go to the army. That's official. You can leave Ukraine. But the problem is you don't have a job, and you need to feed your kids. That's why people go to the army, because they get good money there, and they can support their families.
Well, what I can say that our biggest problem is that although our men are courageous and highly motivated, they are not as many of them as the Russians. I mean, we have less people. Yes, they are good, they're professionals, they trying to help, but they die every day, and this is very sad. I smile because it's a hysterical smile. From February, my husband, he went to the war, so I physically feel it every day, what is going on there. And I want to say simply that God is with us and truth is with us, and if they torture us, they won't stop. I mean, official Russian channels are already talking about an attack on Poland and Latvia, and about their desire to use nuclear weapons against the United States. I know they might not do it, but this rhetoric is not good. So if we not stop them, other people will stop them. I mean,
Yeah, supporting Ukraine financially is only one way how to stop suffering of thousands of people and how to prevent big war in Europe. So it's only one way how we could protect our world from Third World War. So we are really thankful for many Americans who send donations, who support personally and through organization or through U.S. government. It's very important for us as Ukraine. But if U.S. will stop, we will have much more consequences and much more difficulties and problems that the U.S. will have to solve.
Now, many people coming to Christ because I can do what I do because many Americans send money to help with supplies, generators, and they probably could use it for American economy, but they send it here, and people coming to Christ, people can be saved. And I don't think this is, and again, I don't like to do this because I'm here, American there. I'm very grateful. By the way, using this opportunity, I just want to say huge thanks, and I will probably never be less thankful to all American nation, and not only to other countries, how much they helped. But yeah, again, I don't know everything, and I believe the corruption is such a bad thing that people can use even war, even everything to become more rich. But definitely I see the money are coming here, and I definitely see no matter how much Zelensky can steal or not, it's a joke, definitely. But we have more tanks, we have more equipment, and people are not dying thousands only because of this help. I can imagine what will be with Ukraine if it wouldn't happen.
Действительно, потери у них очень большие, ну, примерно больше даже, чем 1 к 10 по сравнению с российской армией. Это факт. Но по технике, значит, каждый день происходит рост утраты этой техники. Где-то сейчас на сегодняшний день 186 танков потеряно, несколько танков уничтожено, и это в том числе леопарды. И вчера было то же самое. И вчера были леопарды. Они горят. Также будут гореть и F-16. Сомнений нет. Но если они будут располагаться на авиабазах за границей Украины, а использоваться в боевых действиях, мы должны будем посмотреть на то, как нам поражать и где нам поражать те средства, которые используются в боевых действиях против нас. Это серьезная опасность дальнейшего втягивания в НАТО в этот вооруженный конфликт.